Here we go. Bill Belichick is brought to you on this Patriots Monday by the commercial banking team at Northeastern Savings Bank. Upgrade your business to a local partner. By Catches Law Group, New England's injury pros and the official law firm of the New England Patriots. By Northeast Men's Health, the experts in men's sexual health. Visit northeastmenshealth.com. And Bill Belichick is brought to you by Diesel Direct, the nation's largest asset-based mobile fueling company. Hey, Bill.
How you doing?
Well, I'm doing great because Wiggy made it down to see you this week as opposed
man,
to another Flex Monday. So,
well, I had to show up. I felt like I was going to get fined if I didn't.
Come on.
No, Bill he said last week he doesn't do that anymore. He's like a days off every once in a while guy now.
Yeah.
You never got fined.
No. I made sure that I did everything on par, Bill. You know that. I'd never wave it in. I meant from Greg. I thought Greg would find me, not you.
No fines.
I listen to you. Now, Greg, sometimes I'm a little wary.
Well, I mean, when it comes to bosses, Bill was your boss.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, are we similar at all? And
I would say, yeah, you got a lot of similarities. You know, I'm nervous around both of you guys.
You are. Wiggy's getting ready for the season to get underway.
Yeah, well, we're getting close.
No, I mean Brockton. He's
sure.
he's got to make cuts. I think. Are you gonna?
No, we already did that. We already. You know, unfortunately, Bill, at a public school that you have to do it because you just have too many kids. So, unfortunately, I now know what it's like to be on the other side of that.
It's not easy.
No, it ain't.
So you make a move yesterday when it comes to Pierre Strong. Was that a reaction to kind of anything offensive line wise Friday night, or was it just a move that you wanted to make?
Yeah, I think it was a situation where they were looking for depth at running back, and we were looking for depth on the offensive line, and so it worked out, which is kind of what trades the way they should work.
Bill, I think the thing that I've kind of looked at from the new preseason format with only having 3 games, is it difficult to kind of get the right proper amount of reps, but still making sure that you're keeping guys healthy because you don't really have that real third preseason game no more where you can that's the dress rehearsal. What's that like to try to be able to manage this new preseason type of format?
Yeah, I don't think it's the games as much as it's the lead-up time. So when training camp starts, you spend a week not in pads and really in OTAs. It's an extension of OTAs, and so then it's a question of how ready are some of those players to go out there and start playing in preseason. When there was a time when you had 2.5 weeks of training camp, and guys are probably ready for that now. When you look at 2.5 weeks of training camp, because the first week doesn't really, I would say, isn't a full training camp week. They're running around, but there's no contact. Now the 2.5 weeks is pretty much the end of the preseason games. So it's just a little bit of a different structure. That's all. And there is a decision as to guys you've seen before, how much you want to see them versus the guys that you haven't seen before, or the guys that you need to see how much they've improved. If you don't get them in there, when are you gonna see them? Because those guys did take a lot of snaps in practice and a lot of snaps in Green Bay, and didn't play very much in the games. So that's kind of the trade-off.
Bill, when you look at a game like Friday and you don't send out a lot of your starters, but the other team may send out some of theirs, do you evaluate those games differently than a game where you might see just all backups?
Well, no, it's actually a good opportunity because you can get to see, your players against players they're going to have to play against. And I thought defensively, I thought we held up pretty well with the group we had out there for a quarter and a half. So, again, it's more of an individual evaluation. Obviously, there are things from a team standpoint, from timing and execution, that are less than what you want it to be, and hopefully less than what they will be. But individually, you can see how guys are coming along, and it's important to know who they're matched up against, because in preseason it's not all equal for sure. There can be some, quite a difference in who different guys are playing against. So have to take that into consideration.
Bill, when you start to look at kind of your shaping your team here, I know with these rounds of cuts, and you start to look defensively, where you guys be? I know there's a lot of high expectations as far as defensively what you guys can do. What's your mindset as far as how you're looking at this defense moving forward, especially coming into a very difficult game against the Eagles in Week 1? What's your expectations of where you see them?
Yeah, well, try to play as well as we can every week. I mean, it's really kind of a week by week. That's what it is in the NFL. You can't say look too far ahead or start thinking about. But we know what we're going to have to face. We're going to face a number of teams like the Eagles that have spread, RPO type offensive elements to them. And then there'll be other teams that'll have less of that. So let's say the way it is in the NFL now, you have to be ready to defend a lot of different things defensively, and so hopefully our roster will be able to handle the multiple types of power running, space running, RPO game, vertical passing, quick throws, possession passing, and so forth. And 11 personnel, 12 personnel, be able to handle all those. We're going to have to somewhere along the line. So hopefully we're versatile enough to handle that.
That reminds me, speaking of that type of quarterback, Gronk said, I think last week or the week before, that you were always talking about wanting to have a mobile quarterback. Is that an accurate statement?
I can't remember talking to Gronk about quarterback. I'm not really sure. I mean, I've talked to Gronk about a lot of things, but quarterbacks, I can't remember ever having that conversation with him. So
all right.
He has probably a better memory than I do, but I'll have to pass on that one.
Okay.
Bill, I just look at the...
Never let the facts be confused with a good story.
I know.
So.
Well, he might, maybe he's trying to get himself in the news here and there. I don't know about that, Bill. I have no idea.
He's a pretty newsworthy guy.
He is. Mm-hmm. Yes, he is.
Is that on Gronk Beach, maybe? You don't remember it?
Yeah.
Looking at the offensive line right now, it appears that there are a bunch of late ads, obviously the trade for Tyrone Wheatley Jr., where there was holes that weren't addressed in free agency or maybe through the draft. What was the thought process this offseason in maybe not creating more depth earlier in the offseason than trying to do it and cram it before the start of the year?
Well, we drafted 3 players on the offensive line. Not really sure what you're referring to. We signed Riley Reif. We drafted 3 players on the offensive line. Andrews, Trent Brown, on Wainu and Strange are all returning. They're returning starters for us. So, and we drafted 3 players and signed 1. So, I mean, I'm not really following you.
I would just say the premium position of tackle was one that was a significant place of need. Riley Reif is a guy that was not a top-end talent last year in the NFL. You look at Orlando Brown Jr., who signs elsewhere. It appears that there was significant need for dramatic improvement, and it wasn't quite established this offseason.
Right. Well, we'll see how it all plays out. Yeah. Not sure about that. Again, we drafted 3 players on the offensive line and signed another, pretty experienced veteran. So,
well, I mean, late were picks, right? They were 4th, 5th, 6th rounds.
Yeah, no, first 3 picks are on defense. That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you don't have so many first-round picks, so.
Right.
We saw Bill O'Brien get into it a little bit with Bailey Zappi. What did you make of Bailey's performance Friday night?
Yeah, well, again, as a team, it wasn't a great performance offensively. I think when you look, beyond that individually, that's kind of what you have to do is kind of see how we matched up individually. And, of course, the quarterback position is dependent on a lot of other things, protection, routes, and so forth. So, Bailey did some good things, and there were some other things that that he could improve on, like all of us. So it's about the way that whole preseason game looked, to be honest with you.
Gesicki is set to shed his non-contact jersey tomorrow. Not seeing any game action for him during the preseason. What do you hope that brings out in practice before we get closer to game 1?
Yeah, Mike practiced yesterday. He's had a good spring and a very good training camp. He's been out there every day, except for the Green Bay week. But he's been able to participate. So hopefully he'll be ready to go for the opener, and look forward to having him.
Bill, I know you didn't have quarterback conversations with Gronk, but how difficult is it to defend which it looks like the NFL has kind of transitioned into that mobile quarterback, and obviously a guy like Jalen Hurts that you'll see this year. But how difficult and what makes it so difficult to defend those type of players?
Yeah, well, the hardest thing is when those players have multiple skills. I mean, if all the quarterback can do is run, then that's not as nearly as big of a problem as if the quarterback can run and throw. And so I think, when you see a guy like Hurts that can hurt you with his feet and also, get the ball to his skill players in the passing game, then that gives you a lot to defend. But it's just kind of one or the other. Then the guy has to be really good at whatever that is. So if he can't run, he needs to be a really, good elite passer, like Brady was, as good as there was. And then there are guys that can run that aren't, they're hard to defend, but if they're one-dimensional, that's easier than if they can do both. And when they can do both, guys like, Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, guys like that, Mahomes, those are, you're talking about MVP type guys.
Right.
So they're very hard to defend.
The Coach's Verdict with Curtis, brought to you by Catches Law Group, New England's injury pros at catcheslaw.com. Catches is also proud to be the official law firm of the New England Patriots.
All right, Bill, let's try this one. So we have this discussion at length about cash spending because the cap has grown up so dramatically with the revenues in the NFL, growing each year. So right now the Patriots are 30th in cash spending. Do you have a budget of strict dollars per season that you must live within, or are you in charge of that? You get to dictate the amount of money that you spend each year. In other words, does Robert Kraft say, "Here, Bill, here's your budget," or do you have the final say on those decisions?
Right. The cash spending isn't really that relevant. It's cap spending. And so teams that spend a lot of cash in one year probably don't spend a lot of cash in the next year because you just can't sustain that. So we've had high years, we've had low years, but our cap spending has always been high, and that's the most competitive position you can be in. So that's really the cash spending. There's no cash cap. There's a salary cap, and we spend to the salary cap. That's what's important.
But can't you create cap space by spending more cash and guarantees? So teams like the Bills or
temporarily you can. You can't sustain it. No, I mean you can't sustain the 20 years of success that we sustain by overspending every year without having to eventually pay those bills and play with a lesser team.
Do you think it is
so
possible?
I think if you look at the teams that have done that, that's kind of where some of them ended up. Jacksonville back in 2014, the Rams are going through it, Tampa's going through it now. So I'm not saying there's anything right or wrong with it. It's just a different way of doing things, and there's the results for doing that.
But isn't it far less punitive now, given that the cap has gone up as much as it has each year? In other words, if you take money and borrow it off of a future season,
it hasn't really gone up again. I'm not really following you here.
The salary cap hasn't gone up over the last 20 years?
Oh, the last 20 years, yeah. But in the last 3 or 4 years, it was higher, then it dropped down with COVID, then it came back up, and now it's going to accelerate in the next 2 or 3 years.
Because the new TV deal begins this year.
No, because the COVID was restricted the cap, and then that was partially paid back, and I think the next, 2 or 3 years, whatever, you'd have to look at the exact numbers, but I think it's 225 this year, and it's projected to go like 250, 275. So it's going to grow quite a bit in the next couple of years.
You don't know this because you don't get a chance to listen to the show, I'm assuming, but Curtis is the guy who says the cap is irrelevant.
Well, it's relevant. The cap's more relevant than cash is, for sure. You want to use all your cap space and put the best team you can on the field. So whether that's paying more cash this year and less next year, or less this year and more next year, is really it doesn't really have a lot to do with the cap spending. The cap spending, if you're not spending to your cap, then that means you could have players that you're choosing not to have, where if you spend to your cap, then you've fully exhausted all of your spending. But again, that comes over time. It's not, you can't look at it in a Polaroid snapshot. It's a multi-year process. So you can overspend 1 year, then at some point you're not going to be able to do that.
Last week we learned that you went to the Taylor Swift concert, and I think people love to find out what you do outside of football, and it's been interesting this off-season, the TV networks and the way that they've kind of dove into football when they have, whether it's Netflix with The Quarterback, Johnny Manziel, now the Florida documentary is out. Do you watch any of that? Do you enjoy watching either guys that are currently playing when it comes to quarterback or guys that used to play in the league when it comes to Johnny Manziel, or just, any type of documentary when it comes to the sport? Do you sit down and watch those types of shows?
I'd say I've probably seen some of them. I don't know all the ones that are out there. So we're still talking about Taylor Swift, though. Huh?
Oh yeah, people love that you're a
Pretty
Swiftie.
big story, Bill.
Everywhere.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you dropped a not headline title of a song, so you have to be a Swiftie. You got to calm down. That's not a lover or a radio hit. It's a good song. One of my favorites.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there we go.
I mean, did Taylor reach out or anything? Did her team reach out or anything?
Yeah. No. I mean, Bruce was in here last week, so
Yeah.
we go from Taylor to Bruce, and
Yeah. I went to Bruce.
Yeah. Good to see Bruce.
Yeah. Did you see the show or no?
Listen to him warm up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So saw part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Pretty amazing that he's still doing that.
Yeah, he's
at
doing great. Yeah.
73 years old.
Yeah, well, I mean, he and John really. Music was at its height there when I was with the Giants in New Jersey in the 80s, and yeah, those two guys are amazing. But yeah, it's great to see Bruce, and love what he does. So you can play both ends of it. You can play Bruce, you can play Taylor, you can play John. I mean, hopefully we'll see him up here soon.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers played a little bit the other night. In your mind, is this the most competitive that the division has been in quite some time?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not really too focused on everybody else right now. Like, we'll get to them, obviously, and we'll get to the Jets pretty soon, third week of the year. But really trying to focus on getting our team to the best point that we can, and so that's really where most of our attention has been. Obviously, we've got an eye on Philadelphia, and we play the Jets in Miami early, so we're aware of those teams, but I haven't really spent a lot of time on them. The majority of my time has been putting the effort into our team and trying to see how we can get ourselves in the best position to compete over a 17-game schedule, regular season schedule, and then we'll take these opponents one at a time when we get to them.
Well, Coach's Corner question for me, Bill. As a new coach, I have a freshman quarterback that's going to start, very similar to Mac Jones, his rookie year. What would be the best advice to give a young guy who's going to be making his first, start playing at a higher level, and some of the advice maybe that you gave to Mac when he was a rookie that I can give to my young freshman quarterback?
Yeah. Well, not knowing the player and not knowing what you're asking him to do or not. I mean, I don't know. That would be a hard question for me to answer.
Well, he's a.
I'm sure that with your experience offensively,
Yep.
It's not like you were you played a lot of offense. You've been in some different systems. I'm sure that you'll play to his strengths and let him do what he can do, and the things that maybe he is less experienced with, you might ask him to do a little bit less of, even though you might like some of those things if it's not one of his strengths. Until it is, maybe you would hold back a little bit on that. I don't know. But again, that's honestly for me a pretty hypothetical question, not knowing the player in detail.
Young, mobile, can throw the ball, kind of like that Patrick Mahomes, but still only a freshman in high school. But he has those skill sets as far as the high school level, where he's mobile and he can throw on the run. He was a really good baseball player. So,
well, if he's Patrick Mahomes, I would give him the ball and get out of the way.
Speaking of quarterbacks, being the student of history of the game that you are, our guy Scheim said last week that Joe Montana was no longer a top 5 quarterback in NFL history. Do you weigh in on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I haven't really focused too much on the top 5 NFL. There's a lot of great players. It really depends on what you're looking for, and some of the players, like Sammy Baugh and guys like that played in a different era. It's hard to compare them to, or Bart Starr or guys like that. I'm not saying Bart Starr was a top 5, but in that day, they threw 15, maybe 20 passes a game. I mean, now you might get that in the first quarter. So it's a different game, and it's hard to compare players of different eras. You look at the great two-way players from, call it, pre-1950. How many players in the league now could actually play both ways and be good at both offense and defense? I don't know how many of those there are. So but it's a different game. So guys that are good in this era might not have been good in another era. Guys that were good in another era might not be good in this era. So the rules have changed, and I know the size of the players and all that's changed a little bit, but just the way the game is structured, and it's just different. That's a tough one.
Our Diesel direct player of the game Friday night was Calvin Munson. Thoughts on what he's shown you so far this season?
Yeah, Calvin's had a really good spring and fall. You know, we got him last year around midseason after Miami released him, and you know, he was coming off an injury and was healthy, but you know, I'd say is much healthier this year, and you know, has been very productive. Play made on the interception was really, you know, a heck of a reaction for him, and had a couple tackles for loss and showed up in the kicking game. So yeah, he's had a nice year.
All right, so you got some decisions to make, and you guys get together today and get ready to make those cuts. Is that how that goes?
So we have to make those by 4:00 tomorrow. And at this time of year, there's a lot of roster movement throughout the league. You know, there'll be probably 1,300 transactions, including the ones that have already started this weekend. So that's a lot of players to go through. Our scouting staff's involved in some other conversations, as they always are with, you know, our players, other players, and you know, that type of thing. So it's an ongoing process, really. So you know, we'll see how things play out, and you know, what we feel like is best for the team. Those will be the decisions that we make.
Everybody wants to know: is there room for Malik Mania on this team?
Yeah, well, Malik's you know, a really interesting player. I mean, you know, kid never played, you know, receiver before, and or return kicks, and he's done both. You know, he's returned kickoffs and played receiver as well as playing quarterback. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. He's got some things on his resume. So do other players. So we'll see how all that plays out.
All right, Bill. Well, thanks for coming
All right,
down
great.
this morning.
Yeah,
I think
of course.
we should do this in person every week. I know.
I'm here.
All right. Okay. So we come out every week. We'll do it.
You
in
guys
person.
want to, yeah,
Okay.
hit the traffic? Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
All right, you got it. Great. Thank you.
That is Bill Belichick on a Patriots